A gust of wind blew a paper napkin against her shoe. She picked it up, smoothing it between her fingers, when a shadow fell across her. "Are you hungry?" a man's voice asked. She looked up. Not at his tailored coat or expensive watch, but at his eyes, gray like the sky, curious instead of pitying. He held a paper cup of coffee and a small bag from the shop. She began, caught off guard. "I saw you sitting here yesterday," he said. "I didn't have time to stop then. I'm Marcus." She hesitated. "Maria," she said at last. "I don't want money," she blurted. "I wasn't offering money," he said simply. "Just coffee. And maybe breakfast." He held the door open. The barista inside glanced at them but said nothing. She followed, clutching her blanket like a shield. The warmth hit her first, then the smell of cinnamon and espresso. Marcus guided her to a small table in the corner. He set the coffee in front of her and pushed the bag across the table. "Sit tight, because I'm about to tell you an interesting story you won't forget. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this a like, and drop a comment letting me know the time and where you're watching from." The rain drummed against the glass walls of Hartwell Industries' 36th-floor boardroom, blurring the skyline of the city beyond. Elena Hartwell stood at the head of the polished walnut table, her fingers wrapped around a slim folder of quarterly reports. Her late father's portrait hung on the far wall, broad shoulders, steely gaze, the kind of man who built empires from dust. She had inherited his company and, with it, the constant scrutiny of men who had never believed she could handle it. Today was no different. "Gentlemen," she began, scanning the faces around the table, "our diversification strategy is already showing a 7% uptick in revenue, with continued reinvestment." "We're not here to talk numbers," interrupted Richard Hartwell, her father's younger brother. His silver hair gleamed under the recessed lighting, and the faintest curl of a smirk played at his mouth. "We're here because the board has concerns about leadership." Elena's stomach tightened. She set the folder down, keeping her voice steady. "Concerns?" One of the older directors shifted uncomfortably. "It's not personal, Elena. But there's a perception problem." "Perception," she repeated, tasting the word. "Because I'm not my father." Richard steepled his fingers. "Because you're unmarried." For a heartbeat, only the rain spoke. Then laughter burst from Elena's throat, sharp, incredulous. "You're joking." "I wish I were." Richard slid a single page across the table toward her. It was typed, formal, and signed by every member of the board. "An unmarried woman at the helm of a multinational conglomerate raises questions of stability, of continuity. Investors are nervous. We're giving you 2 weeks to address this, personally, or the board will be forced to appoint someone else." She stared at the paper as if it might dissolve. 2 weeks. 14 days, Richard said. Enough time to make a suitable match. A cold, hollow sound echoed in her ears, her own pulse. "You're threatening a coup based on my marital status?" "I'm protecting the company your father built," Richard replied smoothly. "You're young, Elena. Brilliant, but young. Without a partner at your side, you appear vulnerable." "You mean without a man?" He didn't deny it. Elena felt the sting behind her eyes, but refused to blink. "This is absurd. You know I've led this company to record profits. I've negotiated contracts you couldn't even land on your best day. But because I don't wear a ring, you'll hand everything over to you." The directors avoided her gaze. Richard's smirk deepened. "It's not about me. It's about the future. You have 14 days. After that, the board votes." Her father's portrait seemed to watch her, impassive. She straightened, folding the ultimatum neatly and sliding it back across the table. "You'll get your answer," she said. "But not the one you expect." Then she turned on her heel and walked out, heels clicking like gunshots on the marble floor. The elevator doors closed behind her. Only then did Elena let her shoulders sag. She pressed her palms to her temples, trying to slow the rush of humiliation and fury. 2 weeks. Find a husband in 2 weeks or lose everything her father had entrusted to her. It wasn't even surprising. Every date she'd ever been on had ended in the same disillusionment. Men dazzled by her wealth, by the Hartwell name, by the glitter of her world. Love had been an afterthought, a costume worn just long enough to secure an invitation into her life. She leaned against the cool steel of the elevator wall, breathing in the faint scent of disinfectant and perfume. If her father were alive, he would have laughed in Richard's face. But he wasn't. She was alone. When the elevator opened to the private lobby outside her office, her assistant Sophie jumped to her feet. "Are you okay? You're pale." "I'm fine," Elena lied. She dropped her bag on the desk and stared out the window at the city's arteries of traffic glowing red and white. "Cancel my afternoon meetings." "All of them?" "Yes. And hold my calls." Sophie hesitated. "Is there anything I can?" "No," Elena said softly. "Thank you." When the door clicked shut, the silence felt like a weight pressing on her chest. She walked to the window, arms wrapped around herself. The city sprawled below, wealth and poverty, power and struggle. Somewhere out there were people who had never heard the name Hartwell Industries, who didn't care about her bank balance. People who might see her. The idea flickered like a candle. If men only saw her fortune, what if she took it away? What if she stripped herself of everything and stepped into the world as no one at all? She remembered a story her father once told her about testing loyalty, how he would go into factories unannounced, dressed like an inspector, to see who spoke honestly. He'd said you couldn't know someone's character until they thought you had nothing to give. Elena pressed her forehead to the glass. Could she do that? Could she become invisible enough to find one honest heart? Her phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Richard. 2 weeks. Don't waste them. She picked it up, then hurled it into the chair. It bounced harmlessly onto the leather. No, she wouldn't waste them. She would not crawl to Richard for approval, and she would not sign away her father's legacy. She spun back to her desk, opened her laptop, and began to type. Homeless shelters. Soup kitchens. Street corners. She scanned articles and photographs, learning the patterns of the city's unseen lives. Clothes, habits, places to sit without being moved along. A strange calm settled over her as she planned. She would become Maria, a name from her grandmother's side, simple and forgettable. She would buy second-hand clothes, cut her hair differently, hide the diamond watch and designer shoes. For the first time since Richard's smug announcement, she felt something like hope. The door opened a crack. Sophie peeked in. "Sorry, just wanted to remind you about the charity gala tonight. Do you still want me to send your dress to the venue?" Elena almost laughed. "No. Cancel it." Sophie blinked. "But you're on the host committee." "I won't be attending." After Sophie withdrew again, Elena let herself collapse into the leather chair. She stared at her reflection in the black screen of her laptop. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, a mask of composure. In 2 weeks she might lose everything. But maybe she would gain something she'd never had. Outside, the rain stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, gilding the city in gold. Elena watched it and thought of all the men who had promised her forever and delivered only ambition. If there was someone out there who could love her stripped of all this power, this name, this fortress of glass and steel, she would find him. She closed her eyes, seeing herself in tattered clothes, sitting unnoticed on a sidewalk. The image should have frightened her. Instead it felt like freedom. Elena parked her car 2 blocks away from the second-hand store, lowering the visor mirror. In the gray morning light her usual perfection looked alien to her. Smooth hair swept into a chignon, diamond studs at her ears, a cashmere coat on her shoulders. She exhaled and began undoing herself piece by piece. Earrings off. Hair unpinned. Lipstick blotted until only a faded tint remained. Inside the shop she sifted through racks of worn jeans, shapeless sweaters, and scuffed sneakers. The clerk didn't recognize her. She was just another customer with a credit card. By the time she left, her designer wardrobe sat in a donation bag at the counter, and she carried a plastic sack of tattered clothes and a cheap canvas backpack. In a public restroom she changed. The mirror reflected a stranger. Brown hoodie 2 sizes too big, threadbare jeans, hair tucked under a knit cap. Without makeup her eyes looked larger, her mouth softer. She slipped off her watch and dropped it into the bottom of the backpack beneath a folded blanket. Her phone went off again. Messages from Sophie, from the board, from Richard, but she powered it down and left it behind in the car. She stepped onto the sidewalk as Maria, anonymous and invisible. The city sounded different from here, bus brakes squealing, footsteps rushing past, a man's voice calling out offers of coffee. No one met her gaze. By mid-morning she found a spot outside an upscale coffee shop in the financial district, where glossy shoes clicked on marble and baristas wore bow ties. The smell of roasted beans drifted through the door each time it opened. She sat on the cold pavement with her blanket folded beneath her and cupped her hands for warmth. At first the humiliation was a physical thing, a stone in her chest. People streamed past without slowing. Some averted their eyes, others dropped coins without looking. She thanked them softly and watched their polished heels retreat. An hour passed. Her stomach growled. She thought of the gourmet breakfast Sophie had left on her desk that morning and almost laughed. "Maria," she murmured to herself, testing the name on her tongue. Maria Hart. No. Just Maria. A gust of wind blew a paper napkin against her shoe. She picked it up, smoothing it between her fingers, when a shadow fell across her. "Are you hungry?" a man's voice asked. She looked up. The first thing she noticed was not his tailored coat or expensive watch but his eyes, gray like the sky, curious rather than pitying. He held a paper cup of coffee and a small bag from the shop. She began, caught off guard. "I saw you sitting here yesterday," he said. "I didn't have time to stop then. I'm Marcus." She hesitated, then said, "Maria." "Maria," he repeated, as though committing it to memory. "Come on. Let's get you something warm to drink." "I don't want money," she blurted, embarrassed by the automatic assumption. "I wasn't offering money," he said simply. "Just coffee. And maybe breakfast." He held the door open. The barista inside glanced at them but said nothing. Elena, Maria, followed, clutching her blanket like a shield. The warmth hit her first, then the smell of cinnamon and espresso. Marcus guided her to a small table in the corner, away from the window. He set the coffee in front of her and pushed the bag across the table. "Egg sandwich," he said. "It's not much, but—" "It's perfect," she murmured, surprised at the rush of gratitude that rose in her throat. She took a sip. The coffee burned her tongue but filled her with heat. Marcus sat opposite her, removing his gloves. Up close he looked younger than she expected, maybe mid-30s. Clean-shaven, but with a faint shadow at his jaw. His coat was expensive but not flashy. "So," he said, leaning back, "what's your story, Maria?" She had rehearsed one, a factory layoff, a landlord who raised rent, nights in a shelter. It spilled easily from her lips, part truth, part fiction. "I'm sorry," he said when she finished. "That's rough." She shrugged, eyes lowered. "It happens." "I know a place that hires without a lot of paperwork," he said. "They're always looking for kitchen help. Would you want me to talk to them for you?" No one had offered her a job in years without calculating how it might benefit them. The offer landed like a stone in her stomach, heavy with unexpected kindness. "Maybe," she whispered. He smiled, not the polished smile of a businessman but something softer. "You sound educated," he said. "The way you talk." She felt heat creep up her neck. "I used to read a lot." "What do you read now?" "Whatever I can find," she lied, then added truthfully, "mostly old magazines people leave on benches." He chuckled. "That's one way to stay informed." For a while they ate in silence. Elena noticed the way he tore his sandwich neatly in half, the way he thanked the barista by name when she refilled his cup. Details that spoke of habit, not performance. "You don't have to sit with me," she said finally. "Most people just—" she gestured vaguely. "I know," he said. "But I like talking to you." She looked up, startled. He held her gaze steadily. When she finished eating, he slid a business card across the table. It bore only his name and a phone number. "If you decide about that job," he said, "call me. Or if you just want another coffee." She turned the card over. "Marcus Sterling," she read aloud. The name prickled at her memory. Articles about a rising tech investor, stories of a billionaire philanthropist. She had seen his photo once at a charity gala but never met him. "You've heard of me," he guessed. "Maybe. I hope that's not a bad thing." She slipped the card into her pocket. "Why are you doing this?" His expression grew thoughtful. "Because I can. And because once, a long time ago, Someone helped me when I didn't deserve it. I try to pay that forward." Something in his tone told her he meant it. They rose together. Outside the wind had eased, and sunlight glanced off the glass towers. Marcus held the door for her again. "I'll be back tomorrow around the same time," he said. "If you're here, maybe we can talk again." She nodded. "Maybe." He walked away without looking back, merging into the crowd of suits. Elena watched him until he disappeared, her pulse unsteady. For the first time since the board's ultimatum, she felt a flicker of something she had almost forgotten: possibility. That night, in a rented room above a laundromat, Elena peeled off the hoodie and stared at herself in a cracked mirror. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold and the strange thrill of the morning. She laid Marcus's card on the nightstand like a talisman. This was supposed to be a test. A way to find someone who could love her stripped of everything. Yet she had not expected the test to begin working so soon, or on herself. She closed her eyes, remembering his voice, the way he had said, "Maria," like it mattered. Tomorrow she would go back. The mornings began to feel like a ritual. Each day Elena left her penthouse before dawn, hair hidden under her knit cap, the expensive scent of her shampoo replaced by the neutral smell of soap. She walked the 8 blocks to the same coffee shop and sat on the same stretch of pavement with her blanket folded beneath her. And each day Marcus came. Sometimes he arrived with coffee and a bagel, sometimes just with time to sit beside her. He never offered money. Instead, he asked questions about books she liked, the places she dreamed of traveling, the way she saw the city from the ground rather than the top floor. At first she stuck to her story. She was Maria, a former line worker laid off from a packaging plant. But as days passed, the edges of her fiction blurred. She let pieces of herself leak through: her fascination with architecture, her habit of memorizing poetry, her belief that businesses could be forces for good. Marcus noticed. "You talk like a CEO," he said one morning, smiling over his paper cup. "Maybe I just have opinions," she said, hiding a grin. "You have strategy. You see systems. You should be running something, not sitting here." She shrugged. "Life doesn't always work out that way." He tilted his head, studying her. "I don't believe that. I think sometimes people get knocked off their path, but the path's still there." His certainty was disarming. She had spent years being measured by her net worth. He measured her by possibility. One afternoon he invited her for a walk. They strolled along the river where pigeons scattered from their footsteps. Marcus spoke about a new community initiative his foundation was funding: microloans for small food vendors. "You sound like someone who cares," she said. "I do. Money without purpose is just numbers." She almost told him then who she really was, how her company's philanthropic wing dwarfed his foundation. But the fear of seeing his expression change kept her silent. Instead she asked, "Why do you do it? You could just be rich." He laughed. "My father was a mechanic. My mother cleaned offices at night. We didn't have much. When I sold my first startup, I promised myself I'd never forget what it felt like to have nothing. Sometimes I think I'm still that kid, looking for ways to fix things." She listened, memorizing every word. Meanwhile, at Hartwell Industries, Richard was growing restless. "Where is she?" he demanded, pacing Elena's office. Sophie perched nervously at the edge of a chair, hands folded. "She's been out," Sophie said carefully. "Meetings. Meetings that last all day?" Richard's eyes glittered. "I know you're loyal to her, but you work for the company, not for her secrets." Sophie bit her lip. "She didn't tell me where she was going." He stopped pacing. "Fine. But if she thinks she can vanish while the board's ultimatum clock ticks down, she's a fool." After he left, Sophie exhaled shakily. She had no idea what Elena was doing, only that her boss had seemed different, lighter, almost hopeful, each time she returned. Richard, however, had contacts. By the 3rd day he'd instructed a private investigator to follow Elena. When the investigator returned with blurry photos of a woman in ragged clothes sitting outside a coffee shop, Richard's mouth twisted into a smile. "Well, well," he murmured. "So that's where you're wasting your time." On the 5th morning Marcus brought her a paperback novel, its cover creased. "You mentioned you liked mysteries," he said. "This one kept me up all night." She turned it over in her hands. No one had given her a book in years without an inscription of obligation, thank you gifts from authors, dedications from colleagues. This was just a book. "Thank you," she said quietly. He sat down beside her on the pavement, unfazed by his tailored coat brushing against the sidewalk. "I've been thinking," he said, "about that kitchen job. They'd take you in a heartbeat. It's not glamorous, but it's steady." She stared at the traffic. "I'm not sure. You're smart. You'd move up fast. You shouldn't be out here." His well-meaning urgency pierced her like a blade. He wanted to rescue her, and part of her, Maria, wanted to be rescued. But Elena had never needed rescuing. She clenched her hands in her lap. "I'll think about it," she said. He nodded, letting it go. That evening she returned to her penthouse. The contrast between her two lives was starting to feel surreal, the hush of the private elevator after the noise of the street, the scent of leather and polished wood after exhaust fumes. She peeled off the hoodie and stared at her reflection in the marble bathroom. She had meant to test men. Instead, she was testing herself. Could she keep living this lie without losing the very honesty she craved? Her phone buzzed. Another message from Richard, 3 days left. She closed her eyes. She couldn't delay forever. The next morning Marcus arrived earlier than usual, his face shadowed by something he wasn't saying. He sat on the pavement without coffee, hands clasped between his knees. "You okay?" she asked. "Board meeting," he said. "Different company. People fighting for power. Gets old." She smiled faintly. "Tell me about it." He glanced at her. "I bet you'd be good in a boardroom. You don't flinch easily." She swallowed. "You'd be surprised." For a while they just watched the passers-by. Then he said softly, "You're different from anyone I've met out here. You think about things. You look me in the eye. It makes me wonder." "Wonder what?" "Who you really are." Her heart jumped. "Maria," she said quickly. "Maria," he echoed, but his tone held questions. "Right." He reached into his coat and pulled out another card, this one with the name of a shelter. "They've got beds open. Hot meals. You'd be safe there." She took it, fingers trembling. "Thank you. I'm not trying to push," he said. "I just don't want to see you disappear." She looked at him, at the man who had become her only refuge from a world of boardroom games. She wanted to tell him everything, to trust him with her real name. But then she imagined his face when he learned the truth, the sense of being manipulated, the echo of every gold-digger stereotype turned inside out. "Not yet." Across the street, a man with a camera lowered his lens. Richard's investigator had gotten his clearest shot yet, Elena Hartwell, billionaire, disguised as a beggar, sitting with Marcus Sterling. Richard would enjoy this. Later that afternoon Marcus found her still at the spot, the paperback in her lap. He crouched beside her. "I have to leave town for a day," he said. "Meeting investors. But I'll be back." She tried to smile. "Big important deals?" "Something like that." He hesitated, then touched her hand lightly. "Maria, whatever happens, you're not invisible. You know that, right?" Her throat tightened. "I'm starting to believe it." He straightened, adjusting his coat. "Tomorrow evening, I'll be here." He walked away. This time she didn't watch him disappear. She closed her eyes and clutched the book to her chest. 3 days left. 3 days until the board meeting, until Richard's coup. 3 days until she had to choose between deception and losing everything. And now, for the first time, she had something more precious to lose. A man who saw her when she was supposed to be invisible. The boardroom smelled of polished wood and anticipation. Every director sat stiffly, papers stacked neatly before them. Richard stood at the end of the table, his tie a perfect Windsor knot, his eyes glittering with triumph. Behind him a screen displayed grainy photos, Elena in ragged clothes outside a coffee shop, speaking with Marcus Sterling. "Gentlemen," Richard announced, "our CEO has abandoned her duties. Instead of preparing to secure the company's future, she's been masquerading as a street vagrant. This erratic behavior proves she is unfit to lead." A murmur rippled through the room. The double doors opened. Elena entered, not in a hoodie but in a tailored navy suit, her hair swept back, her chin high. Marcus followed a step behind, his expression unreadable. "Good morning," Elena said. "Shall we begin?" Richard smirked. "I think the evidence speaks for itself. You've humiliated this board, Elena. Wandering the streets in disguise like a madwoman." "I did it to protect my father's legacy," she interrupted, her voice cutting through the room. "To find someone who would love me for who I am, not what I own. In 2 weeks, every man I knew vanished. Except one." She glanced at Marcus. His eyes met hers, hurt still flickered there, but also understanding. Richard snorted. "So your defense is a fairy tale romance?" "No," Marcus said quietly, stepping forward. "Her defense is truth." The room fell silent. "I am Marcus Sterling," he continued, "and I know exactly who Elena Hartwell is. She told me everything." Richard blinked. "She manipulated you." "No," Marcus said firmly. "She risked everything, including my anger, including this company." He turned to the board. "You demanded she marry to keep control. You questioned her stability. I'm here to remove your excuse." He dropped to one knee right there on the polished floor, producing a small velvet box. Gasps fluttered around the table. "I love Elena Hartwell," he said. "Not her company, not her fortune. The woman who sat on a cold sidewalk and still believed in people. If you need proof of her ability to inspire loyalty, look at me." Elena's breath caught. For a moment she saw not a billionaire but the man who had brought her coffee, who had listened when no one else would. "Yes," she whispered, tears rising. "Yes." Marcus rose and slid the ring onto her finger. The board members shifted, murmuring to one another. One by one, their expressions softened. Finally the chairman cleared his throat. "The ultimatum is withdrawn," he said. "Congratulations, Ms. Hartwell." Richard's face drained of color. "You can't." "It's done," the chairman said. "Sit down, Richard." Elena straightened, Marcus's hand warm in hers. For the first time in weeks she felt steady, unafraid. Later, away from the boardroom, Marcus touched her cheek. "No more disguises," he murmured. "No more disguises," she agreed. Outside the window the city glimmered, and somewhere below, on a street corner, another story was waiting to begin. And that's the story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment telling me your favorite part. I'd also love to know where and when you're reading this. Share it with me below.